In America right now, dying is a $10,000 problem, and that number keeps climbing every single year. According to the National Funeral Directors Association, the median cost of a funeral with viewing and burial is about $8,300. Throw in the burial vault, the cemetery plot, the headstone, the flowers, and the obituary, and most families are looking at $12,000 to $15,000 out the door. The funeral industry pulls in over $23 billion a year. You need an embalmer, a cosmetologist, a steel casket, a concrete vault, a rented chapel, flowers, printed programs, a hearse, and a professionally dug grave. It is, by every measure, a massive commercial operation built around the worst day of your life. But about 390,000 people in this country have figured out a completely different way to handle death. They skip almost all of it, and their funerals cost roughly $3,600. That is based on actual figures from Furman's Funeral Home in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, which handles approximately 75% of Amish funerals in that area. They are the Amish, and what they do with their dead is going to change the way you think about what happens after someone you love stops breathing. So picture this. An Amish farmer in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, drops dead of a heart attack on a Tuesday morning. Within hours, and I mean hours, his entire community has mobilized. Neighbors are already milking his cows. Someone has walked to the shared phone shanty to call the local physician. Friends are arriving on foot and by buggy to take over his business responsibilities, his household chores, everything. The family doesn't have to think about a single logistical detail because dozens of people have already handled it. And then comes the part that would make a lot of Americans deeply uncomfortable. The body stays with the family. Same-sex family members wash the deceased by hand. Men wash men. Women wash women. There are no chemicals, no preservatives, no cosmetic restoration, no stranger in a funeral home doing this work. The family does it themselves. It is practical, reverent, and deeply personal. Now here's where it gets surprising. Because despite what you might assume, the Amish actually do use funeral homes for one specific thing: embalming. According to multiple Amish sources, the majority of communities send the body to a local non-Amish funeral director for embalming only. An old order. Amish school teacher from Holmes County, Ohio, confirmed that most Amish families do embalm their dead, though some of the more conservative groups skip it entirely. But here is the key difference. The funeral director does not apply any makeup, no cosmetic work whatsoever. As one elderly Amish bishop put it, how it is how we take it. The body goes back to the family home the same day. And that is when the most symbolic part begins. The family dresses the deceased in brand new, handmade white garments created specifically for burial. For men, that means white pants, a white vest, and a white shirt. For women, it means a long white dress, a white cape, a white apron, and a white prayer covering. And in many Amish communities, the cape and apron a woman is buried in are the exact same ones she wore on her wedding day. Think about that for a second. The garments that marked the beginning of her covenant are the same ones that mark the end of her earthly life. It is a theological bookend that connects marriage to death in a way most of us have never even considered. The white clothing stands in stark contrast to the dark fabrics the Amish wear every single day. White represents purity and the hope of eternal life. In death, the Amish literally dress for the occasion they've been preparing for their entire lives. Now, the body is ready, and the home viewing begins. But this is nothing like a viewing at a funeral parlor. Someone in the family selects a first-floor room, and then they strip it completely bare. Every piece of furniture removed, every painting off the wall, every rug pulled up. The room becomes an empty space with an open coffin in the center and a few chairs for the immediate family to sit and receive visitors. This viewing lasts a full 2 days before the funeral, and visitors come constantly. Both Amish and non-Amish neighbors are welcome. People file past the open casket in a line that can stretch through the entire house. And the scale of these viewings is wild. One documented event served supper to 175 people on a single evening. All of that food prepared entirely by the local church community. We are talking about a neighborhood that just casually feeds 200 people dinner because someone died. And the atmosphere is not what you would expect. Eric Wesner, who has visited more than 70 Amish communities across 17 states, observed that Amish funerals and viewings often serve as social occasions as much as times for mourning. People share laughter, they exchange stories, families catch up with relatives they have not seen in months. It is not somber silence from start to finish. There is grief, absolutely, but there is also connection and warmth in a way that feels very different from the hushed, fluorescent-lit viewing rooms most Americans are used to. In some Indiana communities, hymns called funeral songs are sung during the evening viewing hours, typically from around 6 to 7:30 in the evening. These are separate from the funeral service hymns and add a layer of communal grief that fills the entire house with sound. And the food itself tells a story. The signature Amish funeral food is called funeral pie. It is a double-crust pie filled with raisins simmered in water with brown sugar, white sugar, cornstarch, cinnamon, vinegar, and butter. Why raisins? Because as one food historian put it, death does not wait for strawberry season. Raisins were a year-round pantry staple that could be pulled out at a moment's notice. Alongside the funeral pie, you will find funeral soup made with noodles, no-bake cookies, mashed potatoes, cold ham, coleslaw, homemade bread, applesauce, and cupcakes. Kevin Williams, who spent 3 decades covering Amish communities for the syndicated Amish Cook newspaper column, described the funeral meal as part of the warm hug of a community wrapping its arms around a grieving person. Now, if you think the viewing is intense, wait until you hear about the overnight vigil. Historically, someone sat with the body at all times, day and night, for the entire viewing period. An Amish schoolteacher confirmed this practice is fading in many communities, but said it persists when the family requests it. She called it an old tradition of showing respect. And there is an interesting folk explanation for why the tradition started in the first place. Some Amish believe bodies were once guarded overnight to protect them from being stolen by doctors for medical experiments. Whether or not that was ever true, the tradition itself reflects something deeper. The Amish simply do not leave their dead alone. If you are finding this fascinating, hit that subscribe button. We cover deep dives into communities and cultures like this every week. Now let us talk about the coffin, because the Amish coffin is one of the most striking visual contrasts you will ever see between Amish life and mainstream American culture. An Amish coffin is handmade by an Amish craftsman, typically from pine wood. It is rectangular, simple, and austere. There are no handles, no padding, no veneer, and no metal parts of any kind. The whole thing is fastened together with wooden pegs. Some communities add a simple white crepe lining, but the most traditional use, nothing at all. The cost runs somewhere between $200 and $500. Now compare that to the mainstream American experience. The median casket in the United States costs $2,500. And that is before the burial vault, which runs about $1,700 on top of that. Some premium caskets at American funeral homes can run $5,000, $8,000, even $10,000 or more. Mahogany, bronze, brushed steel with velvet interiors. The Amish look at that and see everything they have spent 5 centuries rejecting. Their coffin is designed to return the body to the earth as naturally as possible. Pine biodegrades. The wooden pegs break down. The whole thing is built on a theological principle straight from Genesis. Dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. The body should go back gently into the ground, not be sealed away from it in a steel box inside a concrete shell. In larger Amish communities, a specific woodworker operates what amounts to a coffin-making business, keeping a small inventory on hand. In smaller settlements, the coffin might not even be built until after the person has already died. And across every single Amish affiliation, the coffin communicates the same thing. The container matters far less than the soul it carried. The funeral service itself takes place in the deceased person's home, or sometimes in a barn or a machinery shed, whatever space is large enough for several hundred people. The Amish do not have church buildings, so every worship service, including funerals, happens in members' homes and outbuildings. One first-hand account described a funeral held in a large machinery shed on a dairy farm, and the writer noted that it felt fitting to have the smell of the dairy drifting in, since the deceased had been a dairy farmer his entire life. Benches from the community bench wagon are arranged for seating. Men and women sit in separate sections, just like regular Sunday worship. The service runs about 90 minutes to 2 hours, and it follows a structure similar to a standard Amish church service. 2 or 3 ministers and the bishop preach. The opening sermon lasts about 20 minutes, and the main sermon runs roughly 1 hour. Everything is delivered in Pennsylvania Dutch, with scripture read in High German. But here is what really sets Amish funerals apart from anything else in America. There is no eulogy. None. Not a single word about the deceased person's achievements, personality, or life story. This is not an accident. It is a deliberate theological choice. Honoring one person above others would violate the Amish principle of community equality and risk the sin they fear most, which is pride. At the very end of the service, the bishop reads only the deceased's name, their birth date, and their death date. That is it. The focus belongs to God, not to individual accomplishments. The hymns are sung from a book called the Odd Bund, a hymnal first published in 1564. That makes it the oldest Protestant hymnal still in continuous use anywhere in the world. The songs were written by imprisoned Anabaptists in the 16th century, which means every funeral service connects the modern Amish community to the suffering of its founders. The hymns are sung in German, completely unaccompanied, in slow unison. A single hymn can take 15 to 20 minutes to complete, though practices vary. In some Lancaster County communities, hymns are read rather than sung. In some Holmes County districts, there is no singing at funerals at all. Attendance at these services regularly reaches 300 to 500 people. At larger funerals, the crowd spills into adjacent rooms and outdoors, with additional ministers preaching to overflow groups simultaneously. And the final viewing happens right there at the end of the service. Attendees file past the open casket one last time, and parents deliberately lift small children up to look at the deceased. This is intentional. The Amish believe death should never be hidden from the young. As scholar Donald Craybill writes, children in Amish communities are exposed to the reality of death many times before they reach adulthood. While the viewing and the funeral have been happening, something else has been going on outside. 4 close friends of the deceased have been digging the grave entirely by hand with shovels, and these 4 are not chosen randomly. Their marital status has to match the person who died. Single friends for an unmarried person, married friends for a married person. These same 4 also serve as pallbearers, prepare the horse-drawn hearse, and handle transporting and lowering the coffin. Amish cemeteries sit on sections of community farmland, enclosed by white picket fences. Lancaster County alone has about 20 of them. The layout follows a specific orientation. All graves face east, with headstones at the west end, so the deceased will rise facing the direction of Christ's expected second coming. Married couples are buried side by side, with husbands on the south and wives on the north. And here is an amazing logistical detail. In Lancaster County, because dozens of buggies travel to the cemetery in a funeral procession, a number is written in chalk on the side of each buggy to designate its place in line. Think about that. Horse-drawn buggies rolling through the Pennsylvania countryside in numerical order. It is an extraordinary image that you will not see anywhere else in America. No burial vaults are used. The plain pine coffin goes directly into the ground, lowered by hand using ropes. Family members throw the first sods of earth onto the coffin, and then the pallbearers fill the grave with their shovels, while a minister reads or recites a hymn. The service ends in complete silence, as everyone prays the Lord's Prayer together. The headstones in Amish cemeteries are small, uniform, and deliberately identical in size. The inscriptions include only the name, the birth date, the death date, and the age calculated in years, months, and days. No flowers, plants, or decorative foliage are ever permitted at grave sites. Among the most conservative Amish communities, the grave markers are even more austere. Swiss Amish families in Adams County, Indiana, use only wooden stakes bearing initials. Those stakes decay and disappear over time, leaving no permanent marker at all. A book maintained by community elders serves as the only record of who is buried where. In one Western Tennessee community, headstones are homemade from poured cement using a special mold, and then comes the meal, which at this point you probably will not be surprised to learn is an absolute production. The local church district, typically 25 to 40 families, organizes the entire thing. Women coordinate cooking while men handle logistics. There is no formal sign-up sheet or assignment system. Everyone just knows their role because these rituals have been practiced for generations. 300 to 600 or more people are routinely fed, sometimes cafeteria style. The funeral pie, the funeral soup, the no-bake cookies, all of it appears in massive quantities. And the support does not end when the meal is over. Neighbors bring food to the bereaved family for weeks and sometimes months afterward. Friends and family visit the mourning household every single Sunday for up to a year. Community members take over farm chores, business operations, and childcare for as long as the family needs it. This is not charity in the way Americans usually think of it. It is mutual aid, a theological value baked into the structure of Amish life. Donald Craybill calls it a lifelong continuing care system. So how does all this add up financially? The contrast with mainstream America is staggering. The savings come from eliminating nearly every commercial element. The handmade pine coffin replaces a $2,500 metal casket. Skipping the burial vault saves $1,700. No flowers, no printed programs, no rented facilities, no professional grave digging crew at $800 to $1,500, no cosmetic restoration, no hearse rental. Cemetery plots on community farmland are free or cost almost nothing. All the food is donated and prepared by church members. The only significant commercial expense is the embalming itself, which typically runs $500 to $800. The Amish pay for funerals through mutual aid, which are community-organized financial pools that function as alternatives to commercial insurance. The Amish reject insurance on theological grounds. They consider it a sign of insufficient trust in God and community. In Lancaster County, the Amish Church Aid Plan has operated since 1969, collecting monthly payments and distributing funds to members in need. In Holmes County, Ohio, members pay somewhere between $90 and $110 per month into a communal fund. Church deacons distribute money to families who need help, and for larger expenses, communities hold benefit auctions that draw support from both Amish and non-Amish neighbors. The safety net is not a policy with a claim number, it is your neighbors showing up. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of all this is how the Amish actually experience grief itself. The Amish grieve deeply, make no mistake about that. But they grieve through the lens of a concept called Gelassenheit, a German word meaning yieldedness or self-surrender. It is the foundational spiritual discipline of Amish life. In every decision, from what clothes to wear to how to raise children to how to face death, the individual is supposed to yield to God and community. Death is received as the ultimate submission to God's will, not as an injustice to fight against. The phrase, "God willed that it be so," is not a platitude in Amish culture. It carries genuine theological weight. Donald Craybill, one of the foremost scholars on the Amish, observed that the Amish possess an enormous capacity to absorb adversity, a willingness to yield to divine providence that most outsiders find difficult to comprehend. Women wear black mourning clothing for up to 1 year, with the duration calibrated to the closeness of the relationship. Outward emotional displays during the funeral are generally restrained, and here is a critical nuance that separates the Amish from most Protestant traditions. The Amish do not claim certainty about salvation. They hold what they call a living hope that the deceased is with God. They will not declare that someone is definitely in a better place. For children who die, there is a stronger belief that God takes them directly. But for adults, there is a quiet theological uncertainty that gives Amish funerals a gravity you will not find in the celebration of life format that has become popular across mainstream America. The moment that revealed Amish grief to the entire world happened on October 2nd, 2006. A gunman entered the West Nickel Mines Amish school in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and killed 5 young girls before taking his own life. 5 more children were wounded. The tragedy was horrific, but what happened afterward stunned the nation. Within hours of the shooting, an Amish neighbor visited the killer's family to offer forgiveness. A grandfather of one of the murdered girls reportedly told younger relatives that they must not think evil of this man. And at the gunman's own funeral, at least half of the 75 people in attendance were Amish. Some of them were parents who had just buried their own daughters the day before. The community donated money to the shooter's widow and children. Scholar Donald Craybill later explained that this was not spontaneous saintliness. These acts of forgiveness were hard-won practices supported by every aspect of Amish life, rooted in 500 years of Anabaptist tradition and collective memories of persecution and martyrdom. But Craybill also made a crucial point. The rapid forgiveness created a public misperception that the Amish had quickly healed. They had not. Survivors experienced nightmares and emotional instability for years. Families spoke of learning to live with what they called the new normal, which meant making a permanent place for grief and pain in their lives. Now, before we wrap up, there is one more thing worth knowing. Not all Amish bury their dead the same way. The roughly 390,000 Amish in North America belong to multiple distinct groups with significantly different practices. The Swartz and Truber Amish, the most conservative of all, often skip embalming completely. They refuse funeral home involvement entirely and mark graves with nothing more than wooden stakes bearing initials, stakes that eventually rot and vanish. Old Order Amish, the mainstream majority, use funeral homes for embalming and maintain established relationships with non-Amish undertakers. In Lancaster County alone, Furman's Funeral Home handles an estimated 3/4 of all Amish funerals in the area. These communities have also developed their own informal funeral coordinators, Amish community members who manage the logistics, seating arrangements, and procession details without holding any state license. New Order Amish differ on a key theological point. They believe in assurance of salvation, which means their funerals can carry a more openly hopeful tone, with stronger language about the deceased being with the Lord. And Beachy Amish, the most progressive group, worship in actual church buildings, may hold funerals in meeting houses, use English instead of German, and even drive cars. Their funeral processions might include automobiles instead of buggies. But across every single one of these groups, one thing is universally rejected: cremation. Every Amish affiliation considers it incompatible with bodily resurrection. The body must be buried whole, returned to the earth intact. There is zero flexibility on this point, and there are a few other things worth knowing that catch outsiders off guard. Photography is essentially prohibited at Amish funerals, consistent with the broader Amish rejection of posed images. They cite the Second Commandment and concerns about vanity. As Amish writer Elmo Stoll once articulated, "Why would you frame and embellish and hang on the wall the pictures of this house of clay in which we live?" Flowers play absolutely no role at any stage. Not at the viewing, not at the service, not at the graveside, not on the headstone afterward. A text from 1938 notes that the Amish do not hang crepes at the doors of the deceased, and no flowers surround the coffin. And one community practices a ritual found nowhere else in Amish life. The Nebraska Amish of Mifflin County, Pennsylvania, practice what they call rum drog, passing around bread and wine before the body is laid to rest. It is a sacramental act that no other Amish community observes. So here is what stays with me about all of this. The average American funeral has become a commercial transaction. You hire strangers to handle the body, rent a building for the service, buy a mass-produced casket, pay professionals to dig the hole, and spend $10,000 on an event where most of the work is done by people you have never met. The Amish do the opposite. The family washes the body, a neighbor builds the coffin, friends dig the grave, the community cooks the meal, and the whole thing costs a third of what the rest of us pay. Not because they are cutting corners, but because they never handed those responsibilities to strangers in the first place. Whether or not you agree with Amish theology, there is something worth sitting with in the way they handle death. The idea that saying goodbye to someone you love should not be a transaction. It should be an act of community. The Amish have been doing this for 300 years across Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and dozens of other states and communities. And in a country that now spends billions on memorialization, they choose to say goodbye with a plain pine box, a hand-dug grave, a hymn written by prisoners 500 years ago, and the quiet conviction that how you lived speaks louder than anything anyone says about you after you are gone. If this made you see something differently, drop a comment and tell me what hit you the hardest. And if you want more deep dives into hidden communities and traditions, subscribe and hit that bell. We have a lot more coming.